Hi, everybody. Kevin Lonnquist here with On the Pony Express, and what we hope will be the first of a litany of interviews with prominent members of the SMU athletic community. We're going to start off with head coach Rhett Lashlee of the SMU football program, who's now in his third year. Hard to believe that time flies that fast, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I want to start off with you in terms of just your career. And, you were part of a national title staff at Auburn. You've been with other P5 programs, most notably Miami, before you came here, and you saw the inner workings of a successful P5 program. And what's in place here for this program as it transitions to the ACC, and what do you think needs to come, or what's remaining?
Yeah, I think there's a lot made about the P5, P4, and nons, and at the end of the day, football's football. And so I've been fortunate to be on two teams that played for a national title and multiple conference championships, including the one here last year. And when it comes to the football, the X's and O's, the recruiting, the players, nothing really is different other than maybe the caliber of players that you had on those teams. But what really sets apart the teams or the programs and universities that can do that is the resources. Do you have the facilities? Are you in a good location? How's your school? What's the support like behind your school? And what's your fan base and the fan experience, the game day experience like? Those are the things that, at the end of the day, separate people when kids are, because at the end of the day, it's about players. So when recruits are making decisions, you got to have all those things. And I think that's why you see schools year in, year out, the same schools are vying for that, or are, quote, power schools. Well, they have all those resources.
So let's go back to this year, third year, as we mentioned. Besides players, staff, and a new conference, what do you think is different about the way you just run a practice with it, even when you came here in 2022 to where it is now? How different is it in terms of just running a spring practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think like everything, there's learning curves. I'm sure I learned throughout the process of things I thought would be good but want. But, as coaches, we've been running practices a long time, even before I was a head coach. And so you kind of know what you need and what it should look like. You collaborate with the coordinators and try to get the most out of what we need. But I think our practices have been fairly similar. I think what has happened is our players know the expectations. Our players know the standard. They know how we do things, why we do things. We're doing a better job of practicing, and when we're not live, staying off the ground, which keeps people from getting hurt. The tempo of practice is better. And just the things we're trying to accomplish. We try to practice really physical. We run a lot of team reps. We've probably changed that a lot over the years, last couple of years. A lot of schools like to do a lot of individual, a lot of this, a lot of that. Man, the game's played 11 on 11. So the more practice reps of 11 on 11 we can get, I think the better we become and the more physical football team we become.
I was going to ask you about the physical part of it, because it seems like coaches in spring ball will try to balance that, because they obviously don't want to wear their teams out. And so what's kind of the fine balance for you on that?
Yeah, that's more volume than it is the way you do things. If you take a full speed rep, it needs to be full speed. It needs to be violent, physical, just like a game rep. It's just a matter of, when you're in spring and you're in summer, that's different than fall camp. There's a phase. There's like four main phases. You got the winter program we just came out of. You got spring ball. You got the summer program. You got fall camp. And every part has its importance in the process. Spring is about foundation, understanding the schemes on both sides, fundamentals. We want to get quality reps, but we don't want to beat them up physically. We got to get enough physical. I mean, the game's physical, but we don't have to tackle live and scrimmage a bunch and just, do a bunch of really, really physical drills over and over, because we're going to have fall camp to get physical and prepared for the season. Right now, we want to brush up on the techniques, the fundamentals, the continuity, the understanding of what we're doing. So that when we go into the summer, we can continue to take the next step. And then when we get to fall camp, hopefully a lot of those things we're off and running, and now we can focus on getting ourselves physically ready for a long, grueling season.
You said something at the signing day presser about, it really struck me in terms of, you said, quote, we have to embrace the excitement of doing hard things.
Yep.
The hard thing will be the ACC, but put into context what that means to you, your staff, your team, and just the infrastructure of SMU football.
Well, I think a couple things. We got to raise our standard everywhere. We got to raise our level. Not that we weren't doing our best a year ago, but we're stepping up in weight class. We just won a middleweight division title. Now we're going to the heavyweights. And so to move up in weight class and not think anything's going to change is probably delusional. Like, our process doesn't change, who we are and isn't going to change, but we all got to ask ourselves, where can we raise our level in certain aspects so we raise it as a team and as a program. I think what I really mean too by embracing hard things is there's not going to be any more 52-3 games at halftime. You look at our game against Memphis last year. You look at our game against Tulane. Those are probably the two best examples outside of the Oklahoma, TCU, BC games. they're all tight. They're all tight at halftime. They're all tight in the third quarter. You're going to win games on the last 2 to 4 possessions in the fourth quarter if you're going to win games, and you're going to have to play really hard to even put yourself in position to do that. And then you got to find ways to win the close games, like we did at Memphis, like we did at Tulane, unlike we did maybe say at TCU, Oklahoma, and BC. And so we have to understand that for the most part, every one of our games is going to be like that. And they're going to come down to the fourth quarter where we got to, stop them to win the game or go score late in a one-score game. And so we can't be shocked by that. We got to embrace that it's going to be hard to win every single game. We got to embrace that, be excited about it so we can go overcome it.
To that end, you bring up an interesting point, because what was your overall message to your team when you all began spring practice on February 27th, and about what's to come, and maybe more so what has to be different?
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line, right? You want to continue to draw on the things that made you a championship program a year ago. We do have a lot of veteran guys here. We got a lot of new faces, but hey, there's a lot of things we did well. We're going to continue to do that. But again, where are some little ways personally, as a group, as a program, we can raise our level and improve? You're always trying to improve. But for us, like I told them, what spring's about the foundation, the fundamentals. For example, a year ago, we didn't think we tackled very well. So we focused all spring, summer, and fall on tackling and creating turnovers, because we didn't do that. Well, this year we tackled better. We were number one in the country in touchdown scores. But guess what? We also were number one in the country for most interceptions dropped. Right. So how do we improve that? On offense, we wanted to be better at ball security and perimeter blocking. We were, all right, but we dropped a lot of footballs, particularly late in the year. So there's fundamental areas you can focus on, but the global, the big picture, I told them really there's 3 things. All right. We have to be connected. We have to be a group. We have to create a new team culture and atmosphere. A lot of guys are here, but there's new faces. This is a new team. We were a very connected, uncommon team last year, and that's why we were able to win. 2, we got to get better at our craft. We got to get better. We got to get better fundamentally, understanding the scheme. That's why we practice. That's why we coach. And then thirdly, we got to be a tough team. And that has to do physically, but also the mental component on winning hard games, tight games late in the fourth quarter.
September 1st of last year was such a landmark day for this university, going into the ACC when it got the news that it was going in. And then the next day you play against Louisiana Tech. And I'm wondering, did you believe that this team had to win that conference championship from a validation standpoint to give you some momentum as you were coming into the ACC?
I don't know if we had to, but there was a lot of pressure. That Louisiana Tech game was the most pressure I've ever felt, because I'm sitting there going, man, we just had the best day maybe in school history, for sure, in the last 4 decades. Last thing we need to do is go out and lose to Louisiana Tech and kind of throw cold water on all the excitement. So, but I do think, to your point, you look at the schools at the Big 12, UCF and Cincinnati and Houston that just went a year ago. You look at the Texas and OUs moving. You look at even what Utah and TCU were able to do a little over a decade ago. They all changed conferences right after winning a conference championship. So there were reasons they got in, but they also kind of validated it. And so there was a lot of pressure in personally on me, and I felt like on us, that we didn't talk about, but you felt it because, one, we felt like we had a team that could win it. And we hadn't done it in 40 years. So we wanted to. But also, we didn't want to be the school that went 7-5, 8-4, 6-6, and then was going to the ACC limping our way in. Everybody said, well, they only got in because whatever. We wanted to be the school that went in, finishing the season ranked, winning 11 games, winning a championship. And now as we go into the ACC, it's like, no, they validated. They won a conference championship. They had a good team. They had a nationally ranked program. And it just kind of, to me, to your point, validates it. And so I think that's what was really satisfying, is we felt that pressure and we were still able to come through.
I kind of felt like the game in Memphis was kind of some of that, maybe more so of that validation, because of what that game represented and how you all won that. I remember you telling the ESPN sideline reporter that this isn't the same SMU. And because of your history here, when you were here as Sonny's offensive coordinator, and of course what we saw in 2022, there were several almost. Do you think that game, that outcome, maybe even more so with the drive that when Preston hit Jordan Hudson in the end zone to kind of seal it, changed the narrative for this program? Or do you hope it did?
I do. I think it was a big step in that. I mean, I think the whole body of work last year had a lot to do with it, the result being a championship and all that. But that was a big game for us for a lot of reasons. And, part of this, the new SMU was, we did have a reputation when I came back of faltering in November. In the first 2 years, we're 7-1 now in November. We hadn't won at Memphis in over a decade, so that game mattered. Can we win in November? Can we win at Memphis when the stakes are high? And I was a part of the game in 19 where we lost 54-48 with game day there. Great game. We just came up short. And so, they put their little video out the night before the game talking, all kinds of stuff about how you're not going to basically come in here. Almost tried to be an intimidation factor. And that was kind of my point of, this isn't the old SMU. They thought it was, they wanted it to be. It's not. We've created a toughness, we've created a culture about our program, and it wasn't just last year. It was over the last 5-6 years. It's been a collective group of a lot of players before and things, but it was a validation of that. Hey, we can win in November, we can win important games in November to ultimately win a championship, and that's what you have to do.
I want to go back to your career now, just you're coming up through the ranks. You had great influences with Gus Malzahn, Manny Diaz, Sonny Dykes, of course, when he was here. A lot has been made of your relationship, of course, with Gus when you were at Arkansas. If there was one primary element that each of these coaches gave you that helped you become the head coach that you are, what do you think it would be from each?
That's a great question. There's been a lot of really – I've been blessed to work for, I think, 7 different head coaches, and they've all been elite or great at something, and I think 3 or 4 of them have won Coach of the Year awards, and a couple of them have won national titles, So it's hard to narrow it down. I mean, Houston Nutt was who I played for and got my first GA job for, and he was the best motivator I've ever seen. He had a way to get his players ready on game day to play and have fun and have energy, and I thought that was special. Then I got to work for a guy named Gene Chizik, who we won a national title with in 2010, and to me, Gene was always calm. He was the same guy every day. He, had a plan. We're going to work our plan. We're going to trust that plan. He never got too high, too low, when things were good or bad. I got to work for Pat Sullivan. He hired me to be my first OC at 27 years old at Samford University. He taught me, he instilled a lot of confidence in me as a young coach when I really didn't know what I was doing. He stayed with me, but he taught me how to lead people, that life's about people. It's about relationships with my staff, with the players, how you coach them, how you love them, having that connection allows you to lead them and build confidence in them at a high level. Obviously, Gus was my junior high school coach. He hired me like 4 different times. I owe a ton to him. To me, the thing about Gus is a perfectionist. Gus has an identity. He knows who he is and what he wants to do, and he is a tireless worker at getting the most out of every one of his players, out of everyone on his staff. He doesn't let you as a player or as a staff member settle for anything less than your best. He's not settling for mediocrity. He's all about greatness and excellence, and that's just who he is. I did get to work for Randy Edsel for a year, and he was incredibly organized, working for Sonny lets his coaches coach, and I appreciated that. Trusting and empowering coaches to coach and know what they do and, believe in just, hey, I hired you to do a job, go do it. And if you're a self-starter and you believe in yourself, you want that. You don't want to be micromanaged, and he didn't do that. And then with Manny, I thought what Manny did a really good job of, was Manny during COVID and a lot of trying times and a lot of pressure. Manny never panicked, and Manny always put the players first. And he always cared about the players, and he always made sure he connected with the players, brought the players in, asked them their opinions. So that was the first things off the cuff, but I learned a ton from every one of those guys.
Okay, so you were a coordinator for all those years. And so when did you believe that you were ready to become a head coach? Was it a season? Was it a game? Was it a set of circumstances? Or did somebody come up to you and say, Rhett, you've done everything that you can do. It's time to make the next push?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's like one moment. I kind of believe that when I decided to get into coaching, like a lot of us, I'm sure that's the end goal. And I always felt like personally deep down, that I was kind of made to do that. But I didn't know if I'd get the opportunity. And so I just tried to live in the moment and work hard where I was. I had a couple big moments, when I went the first time at Samford at 27 calling plays. I didn't know what I was doing. I made more mistakes than you can think of that first year. But that was a great first step. And then, I go to Auburn as 29 years old to be the OC with Gus, and going through that year, playing for a national title, being in a lot of big moments like the kick six and all the others. That always, gives you confidence. I think probably the most defining moment for me was when I left Auburn and went to Connecticut for a year. And that was the worst year I've had as a coach. We went 3-9, but it was also one of the most important years for me, because I finally broke away from the comfort zone, went on my own, kind of bet on yourself. And I'd gotten to the point with Gus that, there's really nowhere else to go. It's time to go do it on your own and kind of take the training wheels off, or whatever you want to call it. And, I took the job. They were 129th in the country out of 129 in total offense. There was nowhere to go but up.
Right.
And we finished the season 49th. So we did a really good job. We won 3 games. And I learned players are really important then. But got the opportunity to come here to SMU. And I think in that 19 season, the 19 season was the first year that kind of my personality and our staff, we kind of took, still the foundational things I learned from Gus were there, but we just kind of stripped it all down and recreated the offense. and we're not running the Gus offense. We're not running any. We're running our offense, and the staff. We sat in there, and there's a little flavors of all the places that I and we have learned from. We kind of created our own identity. And Shane Buechele with that year, and we won 10 games, and we just kind of took off. And I think that's when it probably for me was like, okay, you can do this with help of others and not have to just follow the same blueprint someone else does. You can be you, be yourself. And it still was 3 or 4 more years before I got the opportunity, but that's okay. Um, I wanted to be at the right place at the right time more than just being a head coach. And so I'm thankful it led me here.
Couple more before we wrap this up. Obviously, now as a head coach, you have to deal with a lot of things internally than you do on the field. So you're dealing with more than 100 personalities who have been through lives and real life pressures. And I'm wondering what your philosophy has been when you're dealing with players or coaches who are dealing with, when it's an on-field or an off-field situation. Is there anything that you kind of gravitate to and say, I've got to handle it this way, and this is the best way to deal with something like this?
Well, not perfect. There's plenty of times I don't, but I think 2 things. I think one, understanding you want to preserve the relationship, and it's about the person. It's about people, and trying to step back and listen, even if you think someone's way out of line or off base or crazy or whatever. Stop and try to at least see it from their point of view and listen. Kind of be slow to react, because I'm a quick reactor. That's why we don't huddle. And I think I've learned that as a head coach in 2 years. The first 6 months, it was just react to everything. And I finally realized, just wait. Like, there's a lot of things that come your way, whether it's bad news or a problem that a player has or a staff member or whatever. And probably 8 times out of 10, if you just take a deep breath and go, okay, and you listen, you take it in, and you be thoughtful, and then you try to maybe put yourself in that other person's shoes. You may go, you know what, they're still not handling this right, but I at least see why they're doing it. Now it helps you communicate, have that relationship, try to help the individual, or maybe improve yourself. And so that's why I just think life's about people, and it's about relationships. And if people know you care about them, you can overcome the hard things in life, whether it's in their life, straining your relationship, things they disagree with you on, whatever that may be. But if there's no relationship, if there's no trust, if they don't know you care about them, then it's all kind of fake and superficial. So I think at the core of it, it's be about the person, have relationships, and then try to just at least see where they're coming from, whether you agree with them or not.
Sure. Now, I want to make this a little bit lighter in terms of recruiting, because you've talked about this being the state of Dallas, similar to how Miami called it. And obviously, the ACC has become such a great selling point for this program. But from a recent contact period, the one that just ended in January, right before the late signing period, what did you and your staff find out about how you were received and the players you could really pursue versus, versus them, even those that you could pursue in the 2024 class? And I'm not talking about Derek McFall, who's flipped, but just whom you could legitimately go after.
Yeah, I think, instantly when the conference change happened, it changed things for us. It was really the last step to validate our entire program, climbing all the way back to the top and being on the national stage. Because now a lot of kids in the Metroplex want to come to SMU because we're the only school in Dallas, and we're a really good institution now. We've been winning. No one's won more games than us in the last 5 years in Texas. We've won 43 games. I think we're tied with UTSA with that. And so, we've been winning. We have a great school. We have a campus. We're putting up new facilities. We had all the things you need, but the conference, they wanted to play on that highest level and on a national stage. And now when they go, oh, your first conference game is Florida State? Okay. It just changes the feel. So I think instantly it changed, more so in the 25 class coming up and maybe some transfers. I think it's still going to take a full year in the conference for everyone to totally grasp, oh, they're in the ACC, and us to feel the full bump. But I think our 25 class early on and the caliber of players that are interested, that are committing, should say a lot to it. I think when we went out, to your point, we're state of Dallas. We're going to start inside out here in these 11 counties in the Dallas Metroplex and then the state of Texas. But yeah, you can jump into Atlanta for a day or two, or South Florida or Southern Cal, and there's a national brand. People know who you are and they know where you're going. We were received really well.
Yeah, the national name for SMU, I've always felt, has been there, and now SMU, up until September 1st, can kind of build as that sleeping giant. And the one thing I've always said about this university is that it's when galvanized to do something, it's never going to do anything half speed. And so what's it been like just preparing for arguably the biggest moment of this school, maybe in its history, on July 1st of this year?
Yeah, I just feel fortunate to be here at the right time. A lot of coaches in the last 3 or 4 decades, and especially in the last 10 or 15 years, have done a lot to get the program a little better each year. A lot of players have come here and played and not gotten to go play in the ACC, but they had a lot to do with us getting back to this point. So I feel humbled and blessed to be the head coach during this time where we have great support. I mean, to your point, the support behind our program, from Dr. Turner to Rick Hart to Mr. Miller and our board, and all of our alumni is just 100% in our direction. The facility we're getting with the Gary Weber facility, just everything that's happening is all happening, it seems like, at once, which just kind of makes this the best time to ever be here. And there's no pressure. We don't have to go out and win the league. We're going to try.
Right.
That's not the point. We're there. Now we want to start building. And I think there's a reason that probably for the last couple of decades, a couple of our local schools in the state didn't want us in their conference because Dallas is special. Recruiting the Metroplex is a big deal. And the one thing that we didn't have was, well, we're the home team and we're playing on the national stage in one of the best 3 conferences in the country. Now we have that. And so I think as you just see year after year, the sleeping giant, reference you mentioned, I think we have a chance to build something special. Now we're going to be realistic. I mean, the last 4 schools that went into the Big 12 last year only won 6 games. It's going to be a change. It's going to be an adjustment. But I think we're ready and everyone's committed to that challenge.
See, I told him that this was going to be less painful than a tooth extraction. So
I don't go to the dentist, so we're good.
Coach, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate you. Absolutely.
I'm Kevin Lonnquist with ontheponyexpress.com. We'll see you next time.